There are moments in life that split everything in two before and after, and this was one of mine. I was lying in bed in agonizing pain, convincing myself that I was okay and to go back to sleep and go see the doctor in the morning, when a voice said, "Clear, direct, and urgent, go to the hospital now." At that time, I didn't understand where that voice came from or why I'd been hearing it in different ways my entire life. But that moment forced me to stop running from something I'd been trying to ignore for years. My intuition, my story, and the truth is what led me here. Welcome to Stories We Weren't Supposed to Tell, the place where survivors speak the truths that were buried, hidden, or silenced for too long. Each week, you'll hear real survivor stories, sometimes told directly by the people who lived them, and sometimes the stories will be told by me. Each story will have a follow-up episode where we will unpack the tactics to help us understand the patterns of trauma, manipulation, and healing. There is something strange that happens when people finally tell the truth. The room gets quieter, people start nodding, and suddenly someone across from them whispers, "Wait, that happened to me too." That moment right there, that's where the healing starts. Not in silence, not in pretending everything was fine, but by telling the stories we weren't supposed to tell. And that's why this podcast exists, because abuse thrives in silence and healing thrives in truth. Before we ask people to trust us with their stories, you should know who we are and why this matters to us so much. I'm Randin, also known as Sunshine, and I'm here with Krystle. And we're just going to introduce ourselves today and kind of let you know a little bit about us.
I'm Krystle, and here's my story. I'm a small town girl from Utah, raised in an LDS family. Though, fun fact, until I was 8, I didn't even know what church really was. When a lady brought over a white dress, my mom told me I'd be baptized, and at that time, I had no clue what that even meant. I remember sitting at my own baptism, small and still, listening to the adults explain what it meant. They spoke about covenants and promises I was about to make. Promises I didn't fully understand, but was told were eternal. I was told I would be accountable now and that I would be guided by something sacred, and that I would hear a still small voice, and that voice would lead me. But it was that same childhood in that same home that my spiritual journey began. One night in my downstairs bathroom, I saw a hand emerge from the doorway. That moment opened me to a world of intuition and judgment that has shaped me into who I am today. Growing up in a religious environment gave me structure, but it also gave me rules around what was allowed to be seen, felt, or trusted. As my intuition continued to show up through strong feelings, inner knowing, and occasionally seeing or hearing things others didn't, I learned quickly that these experiences weren't something to be talked about. They were labeled as imagination at best and at worst devil's play. And that's where the split began. That's where the confusion started. If the still small voice these adults talked about was something to be trusted, something sacred, and something to be leaned into, why was that same kind of inner experience shamed when it didn't fit the script? I was taught that intuition was something outside of me, something dangerous, and something to be feared rather than understood. So I did what many sensitive children do. I learned how to quiet it. I learned how to question myself instead of trusting myself. There was a constant tension between what my soul knew and what I was being told was acceptable. I silenced the very instincts that may have protected me. And when you learn to silence yourself early, it doesn't stay in childhood, it follows you. So, what was supposed to be the beginning of a teenage love story became something I had to heal from because it wasn't sacred, it was abuse. And the deeper I got into it, the more disconnected I became from my own intuition, from my body, from the people who loved me. I isolated, controlled, and taught myself to question my own reality. And in moments where every part of me knew something was wrong, I had already been conditioned not to listen. So instead, I learned to leave my body and to go quiet, to endure. Because when your voice has been taken from you, survival doesn't look like fighting back. It looks like disappearing. And I wish I understood then what I understand now. I wish I had seen it clearly the first time. But when you've been taught to override your intuition, you don't just unlearn that overnight. I carried those patterns with me, and they led me into another relationship rooted in control and eventually an abusive marriage and dealing with the cost of living disconnected from myself for so long. That kind of disconnection doesn't live in your mind, it lives in your body too. Because when you silence your intuition, override your boundaries, and live in constant state of survival, your body doesn't just move on, it holds on to everything. What I didn't understand became fear, and that showed up as anxiety that followed me from my early teens all the way into my adulthood. What I didn't express turned inward. What I didn't understand became fear. And that showed up as anxiety that followed me from early teens all the way into adulthood. I spent years believing something was wrong with me, realizing I was simply unprotected, ungrounded, and trying to survive with a nervous system that felt everything too deeply. I did what many people do. I tried to fix symptoms instead of understanding the source. As I grew older, I knew I had to become a responsible adult. Drinking and smoking pot every day wasn't an option. So I did what I was taught to do. I went to the doctor for anxiety. One prescription turned into another and then another. New symptoms would appear, followed by new diagnosis. Each time something felt off, a new pill was added to the mix. Before I realized what was happening, I was on 11 different medications, all meant to help, all meant to quiet the anxiety. But what they truly did was numb my inner voice, the voice I had been trying to silence my entire life. Somewhere along the way, I stopped asking what my body and spirit were trying to tell me and started believing that I was the problem. When my intuition finally went silent, I lost everything I thought I was and everything I truly am. There was nothing left to numb, nothing left to quiet. And I finally had to choose. In bed after waking up, I made the choice. Not a loud one, not a dramatic one, just a clear one. I was going to stop. I was going to stop smoking cigarettes. I was going to stop taking medications. I was going to stop mindlessly consuming everything in front of me, mostly media. I needed to change, not slowly, not someday, but now. That moment wasn't about control or punishment. It was about remembering who I was before the world taught me to be afraid of myself. After quitting my medications, the next 3 weeks were the hardest of my life. Detoxing was unreal. Not only was my body unraveling, but my sensitivity came rushing back. And this time without any filters. I was once again feeling everyone's emotions, still not realizing that they weren't mine to carry. That's when I met Naomi Haig, a psychic medium who changed everything for me. She taught me how to ground myself, how to protect my energy, and how to control what I allow in. She helped me to understand that my sensitivity wasn't a weakness, it was a skill that needed guidance. She became a part of my awakening. Through this journey, I've come to understand something. Becoming your own person is the most important work you'll ever do. Becoming who you truly are on the inside is everything. We get lost when we quiet our inner voices, when we're taught not to trust what we see, feel, or know. I no longer quiet my inner voice. I no longer deny what I see or hear. I know what I know that I am intuitive. I know that I am sensitive. I know that I am connected and I trust where my journey and my spirit is leading me. And now it's Randon's turn.
Yay.
Yay.
I grew up in a happy home, loved, protected, encouraged. I was the only girl, the baby, the princess, spoiled rotten. From the outside, everything looked perfect. But even as a kid, I knew something about me was different. I felt everything, not just my emotions, but everybody else's too. I could walk into a room and feel tension before anyone spoke. I could tell when someone was hurting before they knew how to say it. Back then, I didn't have a language for it. I just knew one thing. I felt too much. Then the dream started. One night when I was really young, kindergarten or first grade, I had this vivid dream, a terrible fire, an incredible loss, and grief so heavy it felt like it had crushed my chest. I woke up terrified. The next day at school, we were told one of our classmates' homes had burned down and his family had lost everything. I didn't understand how or why I dreamt about it, but I did understand how that friend felt. So I gave him my brand new Spud Mackenzie. And I didn't give him my stuffed animal because someone had told me to. It's because I already knew what he was feeling. And since then, my dreams have never stopped. It wasn't until I had my heart attack that everything changed. In the middle of the night, when the voice said clearly, "You need to go to the hospital now." That was the moment I could no longer explain the voice away. After that, I had to stop running. But the truth is, the dreams and my intuition wasn't what destroyed me. Toxic people were. When you know something is wrong, but somehow you still can't leave, anyone who's lived this knows exactly what I mean, because those toxic bonds are a bitch. You can despise them, but still miss them. You can know better and still feel trapped. For 2 years, I fought my way out of that. But if I'm being honest, I had been fighting toxic relationships long before the last one. I had to look at me and fix the person in me who kept accepting love from the same man, just in a different body. The thing that finally started breaking the trauma bond, writing. And word by word, line by line, page by page, my nervous system started calming down. My mind started clearing. And the story that almost destroyed me became the story that started healing me. And that's when it clicked. If telling the truth could heal me, it could heal other people too. So I published my book. Not because I had all the answers, but because survivors need to know 3 things. You are not crazy, you are not weak, and you are absolutely not alone. And that realization became this podcast. Because when you're stuck inside abuse, it's like being trapped inside a dark box. You can't read the label from the inside. Sometimes somebody on the outside has to say, hey, come over here, look at this with me. And that's what I'm trying to do here, trying to heal each other together. In the Bible, the book of Acts, chapter 4, there's a passage about community, and that has always stuck with me. It talks about people sharing what they had, making sure no one carried their burdens alone. I've always loved that idea because darkness isn't nearly as scary when someone is sitting beside you in it. When one person speaks up, others find the courage to speak too. Boldness spreads, truth spreads, healing spreads. That is Sunshine Faye Media's mission. This is the heart of this and why this podcast has become so important to me. Because the stories we hide in shame are often the exact same stories that set someone else free. When this whole idea first came to me, the book, the podcast, the community, that same voice that once saved my life said something else. If you build it, they will come. So here we are. Welcome to the stories we weren't supposed to tell. You're not alone anymore. Grab my hand. Let me help you out of that box so together we can finally read that label clearly.